Ben-Hadad, the king of Syria, was making war against Israel, and he consulted with his servants saying, My camp will be in such and such a place. And Elisha, the man of God, sent to Joram, the king of Israel, saying, Beware that you do not pass this place, for the Syrians are coming down there. Then Joram sent someone to the place of which Elisha had told him. Thus, he warned him, and he was watchful there, not just once or twice. So the heart of the king of Syria was greatly troubled by this thing, and he called his servants and said to them, Will you not show me which of us is for the king of Israel? Ben-Hadad suspected that a spy was in his midst. Then one of his servants said, None, my lord, O king, but Elisha the prophet who is in Israel, tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. Then Ben-Hadad said, Go and see where he is, that I may send and get him. And it was told him, saying, Surely, he is in Dothan. King Ben-Hadad sent horses, chariots, and a great army there, and they came by night and surrounded the city. And when the servant of the man of God arose early and went out, there was an army surrounding the city with horses and chariots. And his servant, not Gehazi, said to him, Alas, my master! What should we do? Elisha answered, Do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And Elisha prayed and said, Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see. Then the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw. And behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. So when the Syrians came down to him, Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, Strike this people, I pray, with blindness. And the Lord struck them with blindness according to the word of Elisha. Now Elisha said to them, This is not the way, nor is this the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. But he led them to Samaria. So it was, when they had come to Samaria, that Elisha said, Lord, open the eyes of these men that they may see. And the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and there they were inside Samaria. When Joram, the king of Israel, saw them, he said to Elisha, My father, should I kill them? Should I kill them? But Elisha answered, You should not kill them. Would you kill those whom you have taken captive with your sword and your bow? Set food and water before them that they may eat and drink and go to their master. Then he prepared a great feast for them, and after they ate and drank, he sent them away, and they went so their master. So the bands of Syrian raiders came no more into the land of Israel. Later, after time, the war between Syria and Israel revived. Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, made another attempt to destroy Israel under the kingship of Jehoram. Ben-Hadad gathered all his army, went up and besieged Samaria. Indeed, they besieged it until food and commodities were scarce and expensive. As Jehoram, the king of Israel, was passing by on the wall, a woman cried out to him, saying, Help, my lord, O king. And he said, If the Lord does not help you, where can I find help for you? From the threshing floor or from the winepress? Then he said to her, What is troubling you? And the woman answered, This woman said to me, Give your son that we may eat him today, and we will eat my son tomorrow. So we boiled my son and ate him. And I said to her on the next day, Give your son, that we may eat him, but she has hidden her son. Now it happened, when the king heard the words of the woman, that he tore his clothes, and as he passed by on the wall, the people looked, and there underneath he had sackcloth on his body. Then he said, God do so to me and more also, if the head of Elisha the son of Shaphat remains on him today. Jehoram, the king of Israel, is putting the blame of the siege and famine on Elisha, the prophet. The Lord warned them that the siege of their enemies and cannibalism would come as a punishment for their disobedience to his commandments. The Lord said, If you do not obey me, and do not observe all the commandments, if you despise my statutes, if your soul abhors my judgment, so that you do not perform all my commandments, but break my covenant, I also will do this to you. Your enemies will besiege you at all your gates until your high and fortified walls, in which you trust, come down throughout all your land which the Lord your God has given you. You will eat the fruit of your own body, the flesh of your sons and your daughter whom the Lord your God has given you, in the siege and desperate straits in which your enemy will distress you. But Elisha was sitting in his house, and the elders were sitting with him. And the king sent a man ahead of him, but before the messenger came to him, he said to the elders, "Do you see how the son of a murderer has sent someone to take away my head? Look, when the messenger comes, shut the door, and hold him fast at the door. Is not the sound of his master's feet behind him?" And while he was still talking with them, there was the messenger coming down to him, and then the king said, "Surely this calamity is from the Lord, why should I wait for the Lord any longer?" Then Elisha said, "Hear the word of the Lord. Thus says the Lord, tomorrow about this time commerce will be conducted at the city gate where a seah, about 8 gallons of fine flour will be sold for a shekel and 2 seahs of barley for a shekel, at the gate of Samaria." An officer on whose hand the king leaned answered Elisha, and said, "Look, if the Lord would make windows in heaven, could this thing be?" And Elisha said, "In fact, you will see it with your eyes, but you will not eat of it." There were 4 leprous men at the entrance of the gate, and they said to one another, "Why are we sitting here until we die of hunger? If we say, we will enter the city, the famine is in the city, and we will die there. And if we sit here, we die. Now therefore, come, let us surrender to the army of the Syrians. If they keep us alive, we will live, and if they kill us, we will only die." And they rose at twilight to go to the camp of the Syrians. When they came to the outskirts of the Syrian camp, to their surprise no one was there. For the Lord had caused the army of the Syrians to hear the noise of chariots and the noise of horses, the noise of a great army, so they said to one another, "Look, the king of Israel has hired against us the kings of the Hittites and the kings of the Egyptians to attack us." So they arose and fled at twilight, and left the camp intact, their tents, their horses, and their donkeys, and they fled for their lives. The great army that the Syrians heard was the army of the Lord. The Lord had caused the Syrian army to hear a great noise of chariots and horses of a great army that they fled. A similar incident had happened when the Philistines heard that David had been anointed king over Israel. All the Philistines went up to search for him, and they deployed themselves in the valley of Rephaim. The Lord at that time had David hear the sound of marching in the tops of the mulberry trees. Then the Lord went out before them to strike the camp of the Philistines. When the lepers came to the outskirts of the camp, they went into one tent and ate and drank, and carried from it silver, gold, and clothing, and went and hid them. Then they came back and entered another tent and carried some from there also, and went and hid it. Then they said to one another, "We are not doing right. This day is a day of good news, and we remain silent. If we wait until morning light, some punishment will come upon us. Now come, let us go and tell the king's household." Therefore, they went and called to the gatekeepers of the city, and told them saying, "We went to the Syrian camp, and surprisingly no one was there, not a human sound, only horses and donkeys tied and the tents intact." And the gatekeepers called out, and they told it to the king's household inside. The king arose in the night and said to his servants, "Let me now tell you what the Syrians have done to us. They know that we are hungry, so they have gone out of the camp to hide themselves in the field, saying, when they come out of the city, we will catch them alive and get into the city." And one of his servants answered and said, "Please, let several men take 5 of the remaining horses which are left in the city. Look, they may either become like all the multitude of Israel that is left in it, or indeed, I say, they may become like all the multitude of Israel left from those who are consumed, so let us send them and see." Then they took 2 chariots with horses, and the king sent them in the direction of the Syrian army, saying, "Go and see." And they went after them to the Jordan, and indeed all the road was full of garments and weapons which the Syrians had thrown away in their haste. So the messengers returned and told the king. Then the people went out and plundered the tents of the Syrians. And a seah of fine flour was sold for a shekel and 2 seahs of barley for a shekel, according to the word of the Lord. Now the king had appointed the officer on whose hand he leaned to have charge of the gate. But the people trampled him in the gate, and he died, just as Elisha had spoken to the king, saying, 2 seahs of barley for a shekel, and a seah of fine flour for a shekel will be sold tomorrow about this time in the gate of Samaria. Then that officer had answered Elisha, and said, Now look, if the Lord would make windows in heaven, could such a thing be? And Elisha had said, In face, you will see it with your eyes, but you will not eat of it. So it happened to him, for the people trampled him in the gate, and he died. Shortly after Elisha had restored the Shunammite woman's son's life, Elisha warned the Shunammite woman to leave the land because a famine was coming. The Lord was gracious to her and spared her family from the famine that was to last 7 years. Elisha spoke to the woman saying, Arise and go, you and your household, and stay wherever you can, for the Lord has called for a famine, and furthermore, it will come upon the land for 7 years. So the woman arose and did according to the saying of Elisha, the man of God, and she went with her household and dwelt in the land of the Philistines 7 years. Time had passed, and at the end of 7 years, the woman returned from the land of the Philistines, and she went to make an appeal to the king for her house and for her land. She did not sell her land, she only left her property, and therefore it was still legally hers. The king talked with Gehazi, the former servant of Elisha, saying, Tell me, please, all the great things Elisha has done. Now it happened, as he was telling the king how Elisha had restored the dead to life, that the woman had arrived whose son Elisha had restored to life, appealing to the king for her house and for her land. And Gehazi said, My lord O king, this is the woman, and this is her son whom Elisha restored to life. And when the king asked the woman, she told him. Then King Jehoram appointed a certain officer for her, saying, Restore all that was hers, and all the proceeds of the field from the day that she left the land until now. We see that even though Gehazi went out from Elisha's presence leprous, he was continually faithful to Elisha's ministry. Elisha went to Damascus, and Ben-Hadad king of Syria was sick. And it was told him, saying, The man of God has come here. And the king said to Hazael, Take a present in your hand, and go to meet the man of God, and inquire of the Lord by him, saying, Will I recover from this disease? So Hazael went to meet him and took a present with him, of every good thing of Damascus, 40 camel loads, and he came and stood before him and said, Your son Ben-Hadad king of Syria has sent me to you, saying, Will I recover from this disease? And Elisha said to him, Go, and say to him, You will certainly recover. However, the Lord has shown me that he will really die. Then he set his countenance in a stare until he was ashamed, and the man of God wept. And Hazael said, Why is my Lord weeping? Elisha answered, Because I know the evil that you will do to the children of Israel. Their strongholds you will set on fire, and their young men you will kill with the sword, and you will dash their children, and rip open their women with child. So Hazael said, But what is your servant, a dog, that he should do this gross thing? And Elisha answered, The Lord has shown me that you will become king over Syria. Hazael departed from Elisha and came to his master, who said to him, What did Elisha say to you? And he answered, He told me you would surely recover. But it happened on the next day that Hazael seizes the opportunity to fulfill Elisha's prophecy to assassinate Ben-Hadad. Hazael took a thick cloth and dipped it in water, and spread it over his face so that he died, and Hazael reigned in his place as king over Syria. Prophecy was fulfilled, Hazael was destined to become king of Syria, and he reigned about 40 years, 842 to 802 BC. Just as it was prophesied what he would do to Israel, he did, and was a continued enemy of God's people. The foretold prophecy was given to Elijah before he was taken away. The Lord had said to Elijah, It will be that whoever escapes the sword of Hazael, Jehu, a future king over Israel, will kill, and whoever escapes the sword of Jehu, Elisha will kill. It was before the Lord had taken Elijah up, the Lord had Elijah go to the wilderness of Damascus, and he was told to anoint Hazael as king over Syria. Also, he was to anoint Jehu. This was the same time that Elijah was told to anoint Elisha as prophet in his place. Even though the Lord had given the revelation to Elijah and pre-anointed Hazael as king of Syria around 845 to 843 BC, he became king of Syria during the ministry of Elisha. Elisha is the continuation of Elijah's mission, for he received a double portion of Elijah's spirit. So it was not Elisha who anointed Hazael as king over Syria, or Jehu king over Israel, for it was Elijah. Therefore, Hazael king of Syria and later Jehu king of Israel will become instruments of God's judgment on his sinful people. Thank you for listening. If this video was a blessing to you, please like, subscribe, and share. Thanks.